What if events went differently? What if the Prince of Asgard, Thor, was banished to Earth during the height of World War II instead of the modern era? How would events unfold differently in the MCU timeline? In today's highly anticipated and highly requested fan fiction, we will be exploring what if Thor was banished during World War II. Thor's father Odin has prepared to descend to the throne of Asgard, but was interrupted when the frost giants of Jotunheim attempted to retrieve back the casket of ancient winters. Thor traveled to Jotunheim alongside warriors 3, Volstagg, Fandral, Hogun, Sif, and Loki against Odin's orders. As a full battle ensued between Thor and the frost giants, Odin had to intervene to stop the battle between them. For Thor's ignorance, Odin, stripped of Thor's powers and Mjolnir, is only to be wielded by the worthy. Odin would then banish Thor into Midgard. Here is where our fan fiction takes place. In the original timeline, Thor landed in New Mexico and was discovered by Jane Foster, Dr. Eric Selvig, and Phil Coulson. However, in this fan fiction, Thor would land himself in 1945 during the peak of World War II in America. As Thor crash landed in a forest, he saw himself being surrounded in a war. Thor looked around and saw a full-scale battle between two sides, and both sides were using guns. Being puzzled, Thor rushed away and saw a man dressed in a funny red and blue suit looking at him. The man told him to get to safety as the site is not a safe place. Thor asked who the man was and where he was, and the man replied that he is Steve Rogers, Captain America, and that they were in assault on a Hydra base. The year was 1945, he said. Steve then ordered his men to continue attacking the Hydra base. Thor said to Steve that he needed to get back to Asgard with this hammer. He said that he was the god of thunder, but Steve refused to believe him. Just then, several Hydra agents ambushed Steve's unit, being outnumbered. He wanted to protect Thor, but Thor instead rushed to the other Hydra agents and knocked them out with his fists. Thor called for his hammer, but it did not come to him. He then realized that he was not worthy of Mjolnir anymore. Steve said that Thor was able to fight and defend himself, and he should stick with him temporarily until they managed to finish the assault on the Hydra bases. He gave Thor a rifle and showed him how to shoot. Thor would eventually stick with Steve's unit until they finished destroying the remaining bases of Hydra. After the battle, Steve talked with Thor, and Thor said that he was the god of thunder and that he was banished from Asgard due to his ignorance. Because of this, his powers were stripped and his hammer landed somewhere unknown. However, Thor has his brute strength and force with him. Steve was hesitant at first to believe him, but knew that Thor had something strange going on and decided to believe his story. Thor knew that he was unable to return to Asgard and decided to resign himself to exile on Earth. Steve offered Thor a position in his unit alongside the others like Bucky Barnes, Dum Dum Diggin, and Gabby Jones. Realizing that it was much better than doing nothing and laminating about his life, Thor agreed and joined Captain America's unit in the upcoming attacks on Hydra. Hydra immediately learnt of a mystical hammer which landed in Norway. The exact location was unknown, but they had reports from the villagers that none of them were unable to remove the hammer from the ground. Red Skull told Arlim Zola that as much as the Tesseract was valuable to them as a powerful relic, perhaps analyzing and using the hammer could be valuable since the reports of the hammer seemed to resign that Mjolnir. Several weeks later, Captain America and his men assaulted a train carrying Zola. Rogers and Jones succeeded in capturing Zola, but Barnes fell from the train to his apparent death. Obtaining information from Zola, not only did they know of the last Hydra stronghold, they also knew that Mjolnir was somewhere in Norway. Thor said that he needed to retrieve it and to see if that he was still worthy of the hammer. Steve said that Thor should just help them out for one final time as they needed to stop the Red Skull from dropping the nuclear bombs on America's cities. Thor agreed as Steve was a good friend to him and has treated him well. Eventually, when Thor and the others assaulted the final Hydra base, Steve climbed aboard Red Skull's aircraft as it took off. As the original timeline, the Tesseract container was opened and sucked the Red Skull into a wormhole. Rogers then realized that there was no way to land the plane without the risk of detonation of the weapons. Steve then radioed Thor and said that he was a good comrade. Even though their battles were short, Thor appreciated Rogers' help all this time and that Valhalla will always welcome true heroes like him. Steve Steve then would radio Peggy Carter and bid his final goodbye on land, as the other American soldiers knew that Captain America would perish. Their morals went down. This allowed Hydra agents to temporarily overpower them, as the Hydra agents aimed their tanks with their enhanced powers on Thor and the other American soldiers. Thor rushed in front of the tank to take on the full damage from the blast. He knew that this was the last option, as he didn't want Steve's sacrifice to be in vain. On the verge of death from the blast, Thor proved himself to be worthy by sacrificing himself to wield Mjolnir again. The hammer returned to him, and Thor got his powers back as the God of Thunder was reborn. He smashed the enemy tanks with this hammer before launching a powerful lightning strike at all of the enemies. Eventually, Steve Rogers was gone after his plane crash landed in the Arctic, while Stark has recovered the Tesseract from the ocean. However, he was unable to locate Rogers, so he was presumed dead. Thor respected Captain America and told the others that with his powers back, he would return to Asgard. Saddened with the loss of Captain America, he said that if Midgard ever needed help, he would return. As Thor returned to Asgard, things would almost play out the same like the original timeline. Loki would have plotted to take over Asgard by tricking to kill Odin. The only difference was that the Warriors 3 did not convince Heimdall to open the Bifrost to go to Earth. They thought that they were more than capable of overthrowing Loki on their own. As Thor arrived in Asgard, Sif told him of the situation. Thor would then fight before Loki, and the Bifrost Bridge was destroyed in the process. Odin awakes and prevents the brothers from falling into the abyss created in the wake of the bridge's destruction. Loki would fake his suicide and pretended to fall, and Thor would make amends with Odin. Thor told Odin that while he was on Midgard, he learned a valuable lesson about sacrifice and fought alongside a valuable ally. He told Odin that he believes that even that ally would have been worthy to wield Mjolnir. After 60 years have passed since the events of the first Avenger, Thor has grown into a more wiser and smarter prince. During the assault on New York by Loki, Thor wouldn't have appeared to help the Avengers until the very end, when they had been almost defeated badly. Realizing that Loki was the mastermind, Thor would return to Earth and help out the Avengers to defeat Loki. At first, when he saw Steve, he thought that it was an imposter. Thor would then attack Captain America, but the fight stopped when Steve then remembered fighting alongside him during World War II and their adventures together. Thor was glad to see Steve again, as Thor didn't appear in the modern era. He wouldn't have met his love life, Jane Foster, until later during their clash with the Dark Elves, Malekith. The timeline would be the same, and eventually Thor would fall in love with her when he tried to remove the ether from her. Age of Ultron timeline would play out the same, and Thor would return to Asgard after defeating Ultron, as he suspected that forces that manipulated major events. Our fanfiction would resume back during the events of Civil War, as Captain America battled with Iron Man at the airport and were about to be beaten. A portal of lightning force struck the ground, and Steve turned around and saw that it was Thor himself. Thor said that he has yet to repay the debt of being taken care of during World War II by Captain America, so he has decided to aid his team. However, the events of Civil War would speed up with the arrival of Thor. Iron Man told Thor that the Sokovia Accords had no relations with him, and that this fight is between them. Thor said that he respected Captain America more than Tony, especially since he was there physically with Cap during his previous combats in World War II. Thor would then send Mjolnir flying crashing onto Iron Man. As Iron Man was about to get up, Thor said that he had not been hesitant to destroy Iron Man's armor with Mjolnir, and Iron Man gave up as he could see in the God of Thunder's eyes that he was serious. With Team Iron Man defeated at the airport, Team Rogers would not be captured or detained at the Raft prison. Romanoff would still go into exile as she aided Rogers' team. Tony, however, would not know that Bucky Barnes was the one who truly killed his parents, as Thor stalled Iron Man and his team long enough at the airport. At the Siberian Hydra facility, Steve learned that Bucky was Tony's parents' killer. He wasn't sure whether to tell him the truth or not, and T'Challa arrived and said that he would be better off if Tony didn't know about who really killed his parents. They agreed to hide it, and it would prevent any future fights or damages. Baron Zemo managed to escape, and Captain America and the rest of his team would go into hiding as they were being pursued by the government. The events of Thor Ragnarok, Infinity War, would still play out the same as in the original timeline. However, this time, instead, when Tony and Doctor Strange knew that Thanos was coming, Tony would not be hesitant to contact Captain America and his team for help. He figured to leave behind old wounds, and they needed to band together for a stronger fight against Thanos. Iron Man would not leave to space with Doctor Strange and Spider-Man, as Captain America and his team were already on their side. They were able to fight off Ebony Maw and the Black Order attacks. When they were supposed to face Thanos and his armies at Wakanda, all of the Avengers would be present at the same time and the same place, as they were united from the start. As Thor has been wiser and smarter since he was last banished almost 6 decades ago, Thor knew that if he were to attack Thanos with his Stormbreaker, he would need to chop off his head, as cutting through him would not make it. As Thanos removed the Mind Stone from Vision's forehead and was about to snap, Thor came down, chopping off Thanos' head, killing him. Thanos failed to perform the snap, and the events of Endgame would not occur in this timeline. And that is going to be what if Thor was banished during the height of World War II. This was a very highly anticipated and highly requested fan fiction, so I really wanted to get this out to you guys. You guys have been really requesting this. I've been seeing it everywhere in my comments. If Thor was banished, it really would have changed a lot of events. I do believe that he would have fought either alongside Captain America, or if Hydra were to have captured Thor, I think events would have been terrible for the Allies. So that is it for this fan fiction. If you guys did enjoy this video, do make sure to subscribe, like, share, and turn your notifications on so you and your friends are all up to date with the latest content. But anyways, as always, guys, thanks for tuning in and have an amazing day.